What's up, guys? Welcome back to Gubstar Music YouTube channel. My name is Yakub Saputra. I'm a composer and a jazz pianist. And today it's gonna be a very interesting day for me because today I'm going back to giving a tutorial for, it's a music theory, compositions, arranging all at once. And it's gonna be very, very simple, but I promise you, if you follow this through the end, it's gonna be a very, very interesting one. You probably come here because of the title. Yes, we are talking about a humble C major chord. How can we elevate C major chord and explore the possibility that we can do within C major scale? Yeah, C major scale seems like a very simple chord that every piano student, they grow up studying C major scale first because you know what? Because it's all white keys, so it's gonna be very easy to play, right? Yes, it is very easy. So people sometimes forget to explore all the possibility that you can do with C major scale. So what we are here today is actually to answer one basic question. The first premise and the only premise for today is, what can you do to make a humble C major chord more interesting? Having said that, if you understand what we're doing today with C major, you can easily transpose that knowledge to any other major chord. To D major, E major, F major, any 12 keys, major chord will be okay. So before we go into the deep part of our conversations, I want to establish one thing first, that a harmony is a spectrum. C major, it actually stands in spectrum. Like yellow is not just like one individual color of yellow, but yellow can go a little bit reddish, can be a little bit greenish, can be a little bit bluish, and therefore we can see a lot of different color. Let's say there's a C major that is a little bit light, and to the point that C major that sounds very dark. C major, as we know it, is very bright and optimistic and a very innocent color of chords, isn't it? But as we go along, we're gonna see that C major can be very, very different as we go through the spectrum. But having said that, we still kind of want to be able to put them in category in order to be able to understand it a little bit better. So for our purposes today, we're gonna use 3 different territory. We're gonna have a neutral territory. If this is a C major as we know it, a humble C major triad, and we're gonna start walking through the spectrum until we arrive at somewhere along the line of a functional difference. So in this territory, we're gonna start seeing a C major that have a little bit functional differences from the C major as we know it in the beginning. Then that's gonna be very interesting and very useful actually. And the last territory, we actually gonna go to a chromaticism territory, where now the sound is very, very different from the innocent C major as we know it. It's gonna sound a little bit more pungent, opinionated, ominous, all those kind of stuff. And that's where you're gonna start feeling that, is it still a C major? But yes, it is still a C major. But if you dare to play that kind of C major, you better know what you're doing. So you really want to stick around for that. This series is going to be divided by 3 parts. So you're in the part 1 video. If you found this series from the second part or the third part, well, you came to the first part. So this is going to give you a foundations of what we're trying to accomplish in the first place. So in this part 1 video, we're going to explore the neutral territory of C major. And the second video is going to be all about the functional differences in C major. And in the last part, in the part 3 video, it's going to be all about the chromaticism of C major. So it's going to get very interesting. So if you have a knowledge about a scale degree, that will be very helpful for you to understand. If not, I'm going to make a video about scale degree to explain what scale degree is all about. But basically, we're trying to look at a keyboard with a certain label. Because we are talking about C major, we're going to center ourselves around C. We're going to call C as the root, or 1. Okay? So easily, D is going to be 2, E is going to be 3, F is going to be 4, G is going to be 5, A is going to be 6, B is going to be 7, and back to C, which is 1, or the root. But we also not going to only play with the white key. Like what I play in the intro, I'm actually not only playing white keys, did I? I basically kind of flirting with the black keys. And for today's purposes, we're actually going to flirt around with D flat, which is the flat 2 or flat 9. And we're also going to flirt with F sharp, which is the sharp 11. And we're also going to flirt with A flat, which is flat 13 or flat 6. So if these numbers 1, 2, 3, flat 6 to flat 13, sharp 11 doesn't make any sense to you, forget about it for now. It's gonna be okay. As long as you watch this, it's probably gonna take you a while to understand what's going on, but it's gonna make more sense once you understand the scale degree as a whole. So let's start with the C major. As you know, C major only consists of C, E, G. In a scale degree, we're gonna call it 1, 3, 5. Very humble, very innocent C major. But before we establish the C major here, I actually want to walk a step back. I want to go into a precursor of C major, which is a C5, or the power chord of C, which only consists of C and G. That's it. That's it. A very humble power chord of C major, without the third, without the definitions of major itself. In this state, we establish like the backbone of C major. What makes a C major is a C major. So as we go along, you're gonna start seeing me using power chord on my left hand more extensively to establish the backbone of C major. This is very, very important. So if you think that C major is the most neutral part of C major territory, well, there's one more before that, which is a C power chord. Alright, so what's next? If you play this chord in a gig, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you play the whole gig with that chord, oh my goodness, people are gonna start thinking that that's the only thing that you know. It sounds very basic. There's nothing wrong with basic, but you cannot just play that for the entire song, let alone in the entire gig. So how to elevate this C major chord if we have a chart like looking like this, without changing the chord altogether, without reharmonizing it altogether? Well, I give you one trick. Let's put a C sus2. It consists of C, D, and G. It's called C sus2 because it's called a C suspension 2, basically, which means, theoretically speaking, the suspension has to be resolved eventually to 3. So basically, we're trying to make it C sus2. Feels like a tension's a little bit, and then it feels like you want to go resolve to 3rd or to the 3 to make a C major chord. But in reality, we can still play that as a bass chord. As a pop music use that all the time because it just sounds very neutral. You know that it's still C major. You can sing any melody in this chord without confuse it with any other chord. Very nice. Just by changing one note, now we feels like, oh, it sounds a little bit more sophisticated already. Now, what's the next step? What's the next step to make it a little bit more colorful? Well, I want to introduce you with a C major 7. It's not a triad anymore. It's not 3 notes anymore, but it's going to involve 4 notes. C major 7 basically comes with C, E, G, and B. 1, 3, 5, and 7. If you notice that it now sounds very jazzy, is it? When I play this to my students, they said that, oh, okay, now we start playing jazz, aren't we? Yeah, it sounds very jazzy actually, because jazz use this chord all the time. All the time. Yeah, just by adding the 7th, now we have major 7th interval that sounds kind of dissonance, but a very nice dissonance. Very comforting dissonance. I love this. It's like a very, very soothing harmony. A very soothing chord. But what else? What else can we do? Well, at this point, I want to stop exploring an additional notes, okay? I don't want to just introducing the next notes, the next notes, the next notes. But what I want to introduce right now, there is one way you can make or elevate or make a variations of the chords that we already have. By using, guess it? Inversions, correct. Yeah, you can start it from the basic C major chord. You can inverse it to the first inversion and the second inversion. It sounds different already. You know, when you play this, it sounds already very different. Still the same chord, just by rearranging the notes, you have a different color. Slightly a very subtle different color. That's the power of inversions that you should not underestimate. So as you go with the C major 7 right here, you can start having first inversion, second inversion, third inversions, right? It sounds so beautiful already. Sounds so beautiful. But how about this? After we have a C major 7, let's put the chord before that we have, which is sus2. Kind of combine them together, having a C major 7 and add that D into the mix. Wow, now your chord now sounds become more and more colorful, isn't it? Have a little bit more beef into that. And knowing that we can make it more colorful by rearranging it, we can do something like this. Right? So now your chord become much more colorful and meaty. I have a friend of mine growing up, and he saw me playing chord like this. And he was like, I never thought that you can play B, C, D, E all together side by side like that, and it sounds good. Heck yeah, you can. It sounds so beautiful. Yeah, you can look at that. As long as you know the context, it can be a very powerful tool. That's the C major 9 right there. Well, there's something about C major 7 with 9 here that we can observe a little bit. It's almost covered the whole octave of C major scale, isn't it? The only thing that's left out is F and A, basically, right? And if you notice, if I rearrange it somehow, it's actually a note of G triad, G major triad, on top of a C major triad. Check this out. We have C, we have D, we have E, we have G, and we have B. So C major 9 right here, it's an upper structure of G over C. A G major triad over C major triad. And when you combine them together, you have a C major 7 with 9, with tension 9. Very beautiful chord, very soothing chord. That's why I describe this chord, a very charismatic chord. Very, very charismatic chord. Now, I want to make a subtle changes on this right now. Very subtle, very subtle. Instead of adding more notes, actually I'm gonna eliminate notes. We've been adding notes, right? From C, power chord, we add a third, become a C major chord as we know it. And then we kind of add the 2 by leaving the third, basically. We got C sus2. Oh, by the way, we can actually superimpose them. So we C at 9 or C at 2. So basically we play E and D at the same time. You can do that for sure. And we add also C major 7 by adding the 7th and put the D back. So we have a C major 7 with tension 9, or we also call it a C major 9. But now instead of adding more notes, I actually want to eliminate notes. Check this out. Now I'm gonna eliminate the third. I know that the third is actually the definition of major itself, right? But I want to make it a little bit more obscure by putting a C, D, G, and B without the E. So let's go back to the C major 7 with tension 9. It's basically C major 7 with tension 9, isn't it? But now we're gonna leave the 9 here, but we're gonna take out the E or the third. Now it's become C, D, G, and B. Somehow we still feel that this is a major chord, doesn't it? Right? We still feel like we are in C major chord. Well, it's because probably we've been playing E all along, you know, that's why the E is still ringing in our head somehow. But somehow in our brain, we kind of associate this B thing as the whole thing that tied them together, and we kind of assume there's a third in there. We assume until the spell was broken by a flat 3 or the E flat. Now we feel like, oh, this is a C minor major 7. Yeah, that exists. We're not gonna go there, but what I played just now is C minor major 7 with tension 9. But if I go back here, what do you hear? Do you leaning towards minor or major? If you were like me, I still hear it as a major chord. Well, this thing's actually coined by the amazing piano player here from LA by the name of Russell Ferrante, a legendary composer and piano player, and he is also the pianist in the legendary Yellow Jacket Jazz Fusion band. Amazing piano player, and he kind of like the one that coined this type of harmony, easily we think that this is a major chord. It's a C major chord instead of thinking about a minor chord. Yeah, this is a very subtle one. It's a very subtle one. This chord actually called 1-2-5-7 chord because it comes from the scale degree of itself. C, the 1, D, the 2, 5, the G, and B, the 7. So it's 1-2-5-7 chord. It naturally feels like a major chord. We have more tendency to hear it as a major chord instead of a minor major 7 chord. Very amazing. This chord has an obscurity quality because we kind of like not playing the E. So we as a listener, the audience have to kind of fill up the gap. So we kind of have to believe that that's an E. It's almost like a harmonic illusion, doesn't it? Sure, it feels like a harmonic illusion to me. So if I play this like this, the first inversion, the second inversion, third inversion, going back to the root position, I have all those colors to play with. But remember, those are the selections of note. The selections of note is C, D, G, B. But we can arrange it differently. I can play like this. And that's still the same. That's still the same chord that I play. Or this. Or this. So basically, I'm using the same exact selections of notes, C, D, G, B, but I'm just playing it differently in different orders. I double some notes, I add some notes, I put that other notes right up there. So by rearranging it or by voicing it, we have much more color than we have anticipated. And it goes with all the spectrum before this. By a mere inversion, we can already make a lot of difference. But not only that, by voicing it differently, for example, C, G, maybe I'm gonna add the D right here, but I'm gonna skip this B, C, I'm gonna put D right here, and play B and C right here. That's a sound so different than this. Isn't it? Well, I'm kind of like adding another notes too. My bad. But even if I didn't put any other notes, any additional notes, and just stick true with 1-2-5-7, a different color gonna start emerge from the 1-2-5-7 chord. Isn't it amazing? Well, again, you can always apply a different voicing and a different inversions with all the chords that we talk about. That's actually a very, very valuable thing that you should not ever underestimate. Well guys, those are the neutral territory chord of C major. We start from the precursor of C major, the power chord, the C5, and we go to the humble C major chord. And then we go on into more elevated, which is a C sus2. Still sounds very neutral, but kind of obscuring the third. And we can bring the third back to make it a C at 9. And then we move on to the next spectrum of a C major 7. Now sounds more jazzy, right? It's not neutral anymore because we're adding a very opinionated major 7 that actually is very soothing. And we bring back the C at 9 to make a C major 7 with tension 9. And then we go to the Russell Ferrante 1-2-5-7 chord to make it a little bit more mysterious type of harmonic illusion. Very, very interesting. Well, on top of that, if you apply some inversions and interesting voicing, you can make this neutral territory become so much more colorful and so much more different than the C major as you know it. It's very interesting, isn't it? Well, guys, I'm very curious to know which one of the 6 spectrum of C major chord that you like the most. Which one are you gonna try first right now? Please let me know in the comment below. I'm really excited to see that. But those are only the neutral territory. We have more area of C major that we can explore. We still have the functional difference C major chord, and we have the chromaticism. In the part 2 video, we're gonna explore the functional difference spectrum of C major chord. So it's gonna be very, very interesting because you're gonna find more chords that you're gonna be able to use to elevate your humble C major chord. Well, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put it in the comment below, because I'm pretty sure there's somebody out there that have the same confusion as you but have a hard time to verbalize the questions. So that's going to be very, very helpful for the community. Well, if you enjoyed this video and if this video gives you value, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload the next video. I'll see you in the video part 2. Bye-bye.